First off, let's give it a round of applause to our candidates for being here today. And now let's give it up for ourselves for being engaged voters. Hello, that's awesome. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our candidates again. We're so excited to have this opportunity to discuss these incredibly important issues and also have that kind of dialogue with candidates, across our service area, Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren counties for the OutCenter. But then, across, these are state seats that affect the state of Michigan as a whole. Before we get rolling, we want to make sure that we are maintaining a respectful environment of everybody. So try not to cheer or applaud too much. Try not to yell or accost anybody at this event. And also make sure to our candidates, we're going to, keep it low key, keep it positive. We're not going to do a bunch of cross talking. I hope not to have to attempt to mute the non-existent mics that we have here today. So thank you all again for being here. You'll have about 2 minutes for each question, unless I specify otherwise, and then some time at the end with some closing remarks as well. So as we get rolling, if you want to take just 1 minute to introduce yourselves, we'll start at the end and go to the end. Introduce yourself, the district that you represent, and then a little bit about why you're excited to be running here for State House of Representatives. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Andrews.
Sure. So Joey Andrews, I currently represent the 38th House District, which runs the coastline from Saugatuck and Douglas all the way down to New Buffalo at the border. Very, very long but very thin district along the lake shore. And I'm excited to be doing this because this is my home. I grew up around here. I've lived in Southwest Michigan my whole life. I've lived in the St. Joseph area since I was 12. Went to high school here. And it's really great being able to serve the community that I live in, and also to be able to work towards what I see as the potential that our communities here have, and helping to bring investment back and hopefully grow our communities over the time that I'm here.
I'm Kerry Tapper, running for the 39th district, and that's mostly Van Buren County, a little bit of Berrien, and a little bit of Allegan. I'm super excited to get involved and just make some positive change. At my core, I'm a kind person who values others, and I've been saddened to see how people are treating one another, and I decided to step in the arena and see if I can help make a difference in a positive direction. Our children are 22 and 24. This is my husband, John. And we're seeing how it's affecting them, and I want to step up and see what I can do to make a difference.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Jones, and I am running to be state rep for District 37, which is a lot of the South County up to District 38, so it kind of runs along up to the Lakeshore District, and then like a little swath of Cass County. I have been living in Niles since 2018 when my husband and I bought our house. I am a mother of 4 children who are not all children anymore. They've grown up and mostly moved out of the house, which I guess is the part of parenting that we're all supposed to do, but it's also really hard to see them growing up without, living their own lives. So happy and sad. So I decided to run. A lot of it is about building communities. I have been it's been disparaging watching how polarizing politics has become in the last decade, I would say. It's been progressively getting more and more polarizing, and I'm all about building communities, and I would like to see us come back and remember who we are as a country and who we are as a state of Michigan, and remember that we are each other's community. And at the end of the day, when there is an emergency, such as a flood, we don't ask our neighbors when we're helping them who they voted for in order to give help. We have to remember that we are all people at the end of the day. And so that's why I'm running. So thank you for having me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Paquette. I'm originally from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. About 15 years ago, I fell into teaching over here in Benton Harbor, the high school. Got me into the profession. I wasn't certified to teach at the time, but it was what rooted me into Southwest Michigan. Ended up getting certified through a master's degree at Andrews. and then got plugged into Niles, and I taught there for about 6 years, taught civics, Spanish and English, and U.S. history as well. And when you teach civics, you need to live civics. And so with regard to states have the biggest impact on their education system. Our school that I helped build at Niles New Tech within Niles Community Schools was a step outside of average. It was doing some different things, innovative things with project-based learning, which I got to be a part of as a teacher, which I was grateful for. After our superintendent who started the school had to move on, the school kind of just morphed into the original school. And so I started asking the question about how do you better education? Obviously with states, all the fingers pointed to legislation and the state impacting legislation. So I am now in my 3rd term and running again for 4th. Again, pleasure to be here as well.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and begin looking at the economy of Southwest Michigan. The economy has been a frequent topic of discussion for many Michiganders, but many of the issues we face are anything but new. Local downtowns are fighting to grow and diversify, working people are struggling to make ends meet, and housing prices are continuing to increase at staggering rates. This question has 2 parts. First, if elected in November, how would you begin to address these important economic issues? Second, how will you ensure that economic development and housing initiatives benefit historically marginalized communities? Let's go ahead and begin right at the end. We'll go in reverse order.
Yeah, the economy, it's tough from the state standpoint, no excuses, but when the federal government did a lot of printing, messing with the money supply, that inflates all the dollars in our pocket, but here we are. And so from the state standpoint, state policy, one of my fervent beliefs is that we need to have the government have less dollars. I think reducing the income tax as much as we can is key in that. Sadly, a lot of folks that are in Lansing do like to spend other people's money. They want to carve it out for their own priorities. They're individuals that are very powerful that hire lobbyists and they influence decisions. And so ethics reform, I think, would be a huge impact that we need to work on in the next term. I should have worked on it in the last couple of terms. I've been trying to. I know Democrats on the other side of the aisle also are in alliance with me on that. But this is a huge chunk out of our state budget, funding what a lot of very powerful people with money, their initiatives to allow them to gain more off the back of hardworking Michigan citizens. With housing in mind, one of the aspects I was actually just hearing one of the chief economists from CNBC, she was describing that a big hardship that we have is the American dream, in the sense that Americans were taught to have their houses. American dream, get a house. And when people do have their houses, one of their incentives is to maintain the value of their house. And so another aspect about that is that when people are trying to maintain the value of the house, they discourage building of houses because that will then decrease the value of their house. And so we need to build. We need to deregulate a lot of the building aspects that we have in the state because there are a lot of things that discourage building. And so those are the 2 pieces that I'd say on that aspect.
So from an economic standpoint, none of us really like paying a lot in taxes. I totally get that. So I would be in agreement with Brad on trying to limit how much you are bringing in and balance your budgets accordingly. Now, one of the issues I have really experienced firsthand as a small business owner is economically there is not a lot of support for small businesses in the state of Michigan. There's a lot of support for your large businesses. They get grants, they get, first access to pet projects, so forth, and as a result they are also helping build policies that almost stack against the small business owners and the entrepreneurs, which impacts pricing because you don't have the competition. It also has an impact on innovation. So by supporting our small businesses and putting them back as a pillar for the backbone of our economy, I think that would really benefit all of the communities. As far as how housing could be impacted, I don't know if it would have to be balanced between building and also how we are utilizing the homes that are right now. There's a lot of private equity that has purchased up the available housing that's used in short-term rentals. That is something that I would have to look at as far as how it impacts in our most populated areas, because we are in a tourist central, area. We have a lot of tourism, so we also have a lot of people that benefit from renting out their homes as a second, short-term rental. That might go down to how you would classify a short-term rental. Would it be considered more like a hotel, or would it be considered more like a residential? So that might be something. I also would consider, in addition to building, I don't know that federal government would probably be in charge of actually pushing private equities to unload. But anyway, that's...
So I don't have any grand plan to share with all of you. The research that I have done, talking with the different people in Lansing, the feedback that I've been getting is that a lot of times the local government doesn't want to work with the state, and that there is a block there. So a lot of it for me is going to be given that I would be new, is going in there and finding the relationships and how it's working and what we need to do to efficiently and effectively spend the tax dollars to help our constituents. And I plan to go and speak with our constituents, because I feel that, sure, we have a lot of good ideas in government, but sometimes we're not actually speaking to the constituents and the people that it's actually affecting. So I have a little bit of a unique maybe take. I don't know. Maybe they're already all doing that, to be honest. I'm not in the arena yet. And finding out how we can help bridge those gaps.
Thank you so much. Representative Andrews.
Thank you. So obviously on the economic side of things, as we're waiting on inflation to continue to subside, in Lansing, we tried to bring relief to people last year by expanding the working families tax credit to give middle and lower income people more of their paycheck back to provide some relief. And we also repealed the retirement tax to give seniors relief. So trying to put a little money back in the pockets of the people who are most impacted by rising prices and that sort of thing, with seniors and our working families. But as far as our local economy goes, a big part of the problem right now is Berrien County's population is shrinking. It's the only county in Southwest Michigan and West Michigan that's losing population. And I think something that everybody in this room can do is have some hard conversations with your local elected officials on the county level and in your townships and cities about what they're doing to address the declining population. Because as population declines, we lose tax base, we lose services, we lose workers, all things that we desperately need. And a key part of this problem is the housing crisis. We'll say that what we've heard from MISHDA, our housing authority in Michigan, is that really the key problem is that we're not building enough. Just point blank, we're not building enough. And really, anytime someone comes with a housing project, the answer should just be yes. And the reason for that is because with the shortage we have in the housing supply right now, people with superior buying power are able to buy lower value houses, cash buy, out, overbid. And so, high-income people are outbidding middle-income people, who are then outbidding low-income people, who then have nowhere to go. And so when this conversation comes up, and when you hear people come with housing projects, of course, we need to be reticent of building workforce housing and affordable housing. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that housing of all types is available, so that people with superior buying power aren't pushing lower-income people out of the market. And we're, I think, fortunate in our communities here that people want to live here. It's just, when the average cost of a house in St. Joe, for instance, is $350,000 or $750,000 down in Union Pier, you can understand why people are looking at that and saying, I'm going to go elsewhere. So.
Thank you so much. Our next question is going to be asked by Teresa. She is the COO of Area Agency on Aging. Teresa, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks. First, thank you to OutCenter for hosting this forum, and to you candidates for coming to here today. As we know, accessibility is a huge issue for older adults and people with disabilities throughout Southwest Michigan. And I appreciate that a couple of you spoke to the housing issue in your first response to the economic question. But housing, transportation, access to essential services like direct care workforce and others is still a challenge throughout Southwest Michigan. And this directly impacts people's health-related social needs and the social determinants of health that impact our larger community. So I'm curious, as federal funds have not kept pace with inflation, and many of our organizations downstream of Area Agency on Aging, including us, have been squeezed a bit when it comes to trying to meet the growing and increasing complexity of needs with fewer funds available for that. What do you intend to do if you're elected or re-elected to meet those needs of older adults and people with disabilities in our community?
All right, we'll go ahead and start with Ms. Tapper.
I don't have all the answers for that, but I do appreciate it, and I knew I recognized you because I serve on the board with Carol. With my grandparents and with the care of my mom for the last 15 years, who passed away last year, all of those needs that you're talking about, I have watched that and I've heard about that, and she was in the nursing home for 12 of those 15 years and spoke with many of the staff and with families and other residents there, and we do have huge gaps there. And I see the needs and I see how much those people need the help. I don't understand how people in our community who don't have someone to advocate for them function, to be honest. It breaks my heart. And I worry about that, and I would love to see systems in place that can assist them and that they know are out there. And I know there are some systems because all of you do wonderful work, but some people don't even know that's available to them and that there is help and where to go. So to be honest, I'm an advocate for it. Again, talking with the people in Lansing and the research that I've done, I'm not exactly sure how to make it all happen, but I'm definitely going to advocate for it.
Yeah, so obviously, we made some increases into funding for home care workers and that workforce in the last couple of budgets. Still not as much as it needs to be. I think we still need to do better and keep scaling this up. But I also recently had some conversations with some care workers in the community here, and there's some things that we could do to make their lives a lot easier right now that I think is driving people out of this industry too. I'm hearing from them about some of the changes to them having to being mandatory that they log in through a web portal. Obviously, that means you have to have a cell phone. That means that wherever you're doing your job at has to have internet access. If you're in a rural area with poor Wi-Fi or no good signal, then all of a sudden, how are you checking in? And then you're not getting paid. Issues with how pay is administered that creates more difficulties and complications. And I mean, as you know, this is not a high-paid workforce. So the more complications and difficulties you throw in front of people who are, really, if you're a home care worker, it's a labor of love, not a wealth-generating endeavor. It only takes so much before you just say, I can't do this anymore, and you give up. And so, aside from obviously increasing the compensation for these people, I really, think we've got to take a comprehensive look at what burdens we're putting on people to do this job and make it easier. Because obviously, we want people to age in place. We want people to be able to live in their own home as much as possible. The outcomes are better. It's a lot more cost-effective for our society to do so. And we got to pull some of these barriers back and support these people who are willing to do this work.
Yeah, continue putting forward amendments that the Area Agency on Aging proposes. I will continue doing that. But then also, as I even mentioned at that forum, is if there are roadblocks that some of these supports can't make it across the finish line, we have to figure out why as legislators. What are the barriers? And then come to the next meeting describing specifically, well, this didn't get across the finish line because of X, Y, and Z, and then reassess the approach there. Funding for ombudsmen, advocates for individuals who are in the home, all these things are so key, as the Rep. Andrews points as well, is that keeping people in the home who are able to be, who want to be, supporting them, that is just fiscally responsible. It's good all around the mulberry bush. So next term, getting to that point of, well, here are the barriers, here's why, and then how do we troubleshoot them for success.
As the luxury of going last, I'm going to absorb a little bit of what everybody said. So as a freshman entering into the legislative floor, I do not have all of those connections yet, so I'm at a little bit of a lower down on the totem pole, but it would be something that I would work very closely with you as a liaison between the state and the Area on Agency, the Agency on Aging. So, yeah, it would be something that I would work with you as far as determining what key point areas you are needing the most support on, and then how I can take that to the State House and meet those needs as much as possible, and benchmark it as far as, all right, we met those needs, now what else is going on, whether it's transportation, expanding our transportation services for public transportation. That I would love to see that, because it not just benefits our aging population, which is growing tremendously, but our younger generations as well, who don't have access to vehicles, who don't have access because the cost of insurance, the cost of cars, it's affecting a lot of people. So if we were to expand on public transportation and make it more available to get around from not just within the city, but multiple cities, that would, I think, benefit our elderly population as well. So I would work with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Our next question will be asked by our friend Eric from our friends over at St. A's and St. Paul.
All right. First of all, it's a great honor to be here. I am new to this area. I just moved into at the end of July. And thank the OutCenter for organizing this, and thank you for being here. By virtue of my office as a Episcopal priest, I meet a lot of people of Southwest Michigan that have deep faith in spirituality. And my care also goes to a lot of folks who have no faith or practice different faith. The great tradition of freedom of religion protects us all from a government-mandated religion and allows us all to practice our faith or not practice a faith, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights and freedoms of others. So how do you, as an elected representative, and guarantee or balance that we can practice faith and spirituality in freedom, and otherwise protect those from imposing it or enforcing it onto us?
All right. We'll go ahead and start with Representative Andrews, and then we'll move down the line.
Sure. I mean, I think in part, in your statement, you kind of answered it, right? Like, you're free to do whatever you want at home. And I mean, I'm all about leaving people alone. If you want to believe what you want in the privacy of your own home, no one can take that from you, nor should anybody take that from you. The problem comes when what you're believing at home starts to infringe upon other people's right to existence, basically, or to happiness, you know? And I think that's the part that we seem to miss when we talk about free speech all the time is, you have a freedom to express yourself, but at some point or another, if your expression starts impacting somebody else's, life, livelihood, even their mental health, then that's where we kind of need to draw a line. And that's sort of where my line is personally. As far as legislating, obviously we have very strong federal protections on speech, so there's very little we're allowed to do on the state level when it comes to speech itself. But as far as protecting people's rights, I definitely have a very strong red line on ensuring that everybody is able to live happily and freely and openly, the way that they want to, and express their identity without fear of being oppressed or attacked. So I think we've tried to do that in our legislation over the last year, expanding our Civil Rights Act and banning conversion therapy for minors, for instance, as expressions of speech that I think are maybe not good ones for the general public. That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do, because that's fantastic that you look at all of and how everyone wants to live their life. That's my basis. Again, each life has value. Each person has their intuition, their guidance, however it is that they want to live their lives, and I believe that they're allowed to live that, as long as they are not imposing or harming someone else in doing so. Again, it's part of what's so great about our country is freedom. And there are all these different choices and religions, and I believe they're all there for a reason. And each person gets to go where they're guided.
So I believe in protecting the rights and freedoms of individuals. So long as you are not doing anything that is impinging on anybody else's rights or freedoms, knock yourself out. But to me, I believe that we have a responsibility that comes with our freedoms, that we are respectful of others and their freedoms as well, that we're not using our religion or our freedom of, our voice to oppress those who we disagree with, who don't live the way we live, or who don't love the way we love, or look the way we look the way we look. But I believe that it is very important to protect those rights, and I would never do anything that would remove rights from an individual. Those are constitutionally protected rights, and they are that way for a reason.
Yeah, on that question, we've been extremely blessed with what we've been given from prior Americans, and we're to preserve our framework for future Americans. And by no means does that mean that we're going to have agreements on all things. That's what the courts are for. That's what these forums are for, is to discuss what is lawful, what is not, and then also to figure out how we can live in harmony in our own communities. And so I won't add my own context to the question, but in terms of the state standpoint, upholding what we've been given federally, and then also figuring out how that filters down as we figured our identity as a state, as communities. That's something that I enjoy. It's why I got into teaching civics, and it's why I'm here as well. So.
Absolutely. Representative Andrews, you mentioned in your answer the issue of conversion therapy. So if we don't mind drilling down just a little bit more on this topic, 1 minute responses just so we can keep it speedy. Conversion therapy has been proven time and time again to be incredibly harmful, even life-threatening, to LGBTQ plus people. Understanding that Michigan's ban on conversion therapy does not apply to faith practitioners, and everyone is entitled to equal treatment and protection under the law, what can you do as an elected official to protect LGBTQ plus people, especially young people, and close this loophole? And we'll go down the line as well.
Starting me again. We passed the ban as it is currently. I'm personally a proponent of expanding the ban broadly. Like you said, there's no evidence to suggest that conversion therapy does anything other than harm people. The existing law that we passed, I think, is a first step, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to take continuing steps as we demonstrate to people that the ban works and that it is better for people, and mental health outcomes are better when we're not forcing conversion therapy on them, and we can extend this ban so it's total.
I'm going to be absolutely honest with you that I do not feel educated enough on this subject to answer it. So I will educate myself, and I appreciate you bringing it to my attention.
I am for expanding the ban on conversion therapy because, as we spoke about before, your rights extend so far as they are not impinging on somebody else's rights. And at that point, conversion therapy being forced on a young child it's impinging on their rights. So I'm for the ban being expanded across the board.
So the way the bill is written, it redefines what conversion therapy means. And so the way, and this is something that we vetted before we voted on it as well with our legal counsel, is that a medical health professional can lose their license if a child who, say the 13-year-old boy, comes and says, I feel like I might be a girl. And that medical professional can only affirm this belief. And so this is something that's concerning to me. I voted no for that reason, because this isn't what people think of when they hear conversion therapy. It's only affirming. And so affirming potential beliefs that a kid may grow out of, and that's something that's very concerning to me, and I would not expand it, especially after we talked about our last question and religious rights, but also because of that definition change. And it matters deeply how they change the definition in that term.
Thank you so much. And just so we're all aware, we will be touching on issues of trans issues and issues with students as we continue down through here as well. Our next question is going to be brought to us. If you've been to Benton Harbor ever before, you have probably seen him running around downtown. Our wonderful friend Nick Gunn from the Benton Harbor Arts Association and like 50% of the boards.
Hello everybody, I'm Nick Gunn, and Southwest Michigan is built of so many different communities, Buchanan, Berrien Springs, Benton Harbor, Niles, Eau Claire, and there's so many different, different disparities across our different communities, so many inequalities. I'm a student as well at Andrews University. I'm studying education. I'm on the private school board here in Benton Harbor, and I'm going into different classrooms. I'm going to different schools, and I see so many different inequalities. So if you guys talk a little bit about, if you're elected or being in office, what are some of the things that you would like to in place or contribute to try and get rid of some of these inequalities and try and bring equality?
Fantastic. This is specifically regarding equity across our diverse community. So we have, equity when it comes to economic, but obviously Nick touching on schools and things like that. Mr. Paquette, I won't, forgive me, Representative Paquette.
No,
I went to,
Brad is fine.
yeah, immediately went to like school, Mr. Paquette.
No, I love the question.
For those who don't know, my younger brother had him in school. It's a whole backstory. I'm remembering the lore from back in those days. So, Representative Paquette, please go ahead.
I had very similar experience. So what got me to teaching, I was subbing in all the schools in the area and going around. Obviously started at Benton Harbor and saw some differences by all means, and that's what school boards have a huge impact on how their education system goes. When I was chairing the education budget last term, it was my budget actually that filled in the gap from the state standpoint on education funding. So it paved that gap away. There was a gap since Proposal 1 back in Proposal A in '94, and that we actually filled that in 2 years ago, which is great. But what you're alluding to, I think, is out of formula districts. So in New Buffalo is actually one of the schools that they get about $28,000 per pupil because they have a bunch of second homesteads, they have a casino in the district, right? And so that brings in more funding. They actually get 0 state dollars because they're out of formula. But what you're mentioning there too in terms of school boards, like I kind of mentioned a little bit, is they are to have a lot of autonomy in how their school district runs. And that's something where, when we're talking about education policy, in Lansing, there are all these different people trying to pull the donkey a different direction. You've got the House of Representatives, the Senate, the governor's team. You've got a state school board. You've got a superintendent that's not appointed by the governor. There are all these different people trying to say, hey, we're going to better education, and that's part of our problem that we do have. And so in terms of supporting our school boards as much as possible, increasing foundation allowance, because that's what per pupil brings into the school, allowing principals to hire their high quality teachers, and these teachers that for some reason they have to only work more years to get paid more. This is something that's backwards and it's stunting in our profession, and we have teachers between 3 to 5 years leaving because of a way we do our collective bargaining agreements, and it pushes good teachers out of the classroom into other professions where they bring their talents. That's a huge aspect, more autonomy from our local school districts so they can innovate. What got me into Niles is there's that superintendent I mentioned before who started the school. He got brought in to bring on change. He brought on change, and that's what kept me and a handful of other teachers like me in the school district.
Thank you so much. Ms. Jones.
So from an equity standpoint with education, this also goes for healthcare access. This also goes across the board for multiple facets in society. It's really easy for me to talk down and say, oh, from my standpoint, I think that this would be the best way to fix whatever issue is going on. But ultimately, I need to speak with people who are directly impacted by these equity issues. So that, again, I can take it to the State House and figure out ways to fix the loopholes that they're falling through the cracks on. One of them would be funding through the schools. I believe that our education for our children is our future. So I would like to see an equal opportunity across the board for all of our students to receive a high-quality education and lead the states as far as putting Michigan on the map for one of the best educations that a child can receive in public schools. So I think that would help create a more even playing field for our students that are graduating, and that they have the first step that they can take forward for the rest of their lives, and hopefully take them out of that place of inequality and put them in a place where they're more likely to thrive.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ms. Tapper.
Ditto. I mean, truly. I knowledge is power, and our schools are key. And again, each life has value, and how that person wants to live is how they get to live. And everyone deserves the chance for that public education. And those stepping stones, and to be better and to do better. And we've, as Angela said, we've got to find out where those loopholes are, and talking with those people and finding out how we can bridge those gaps and make those connections and bring the community concerns to the state legislature.
Thank you so much. And Representative Andrews.
Yes, I'm going to lock in on the term equality of opportunity. And this goes beyond just education, because it starts before and it continues after education. So, equality of opportunity means that regardless of who you are, where you're born, that everybody gets a fair shot. Right now, a lot of people don't get a fair shot. But that means that, we have to address problems where they start at their root, and as they go on. So that means, a paid family leave system, so that no parent has to feel like they need to exit the workforce to start a family. Good child care, so that if parents decide they want to continue working, that there's a place for their kids to be educated and cared for. An equitably funded school system, so that everybody gets a quality education and has the ability to then choose what's next for them in life. Part of the reason that I'm happy and proud that we're supporting free community college is because that, again, gives graduating students another opportunity that maybe they couldn't afford otherwise to continue that education. Such a strong supporter of the trades, because I believe that kids that want to enter into skilled trades workforce should have that opportunity. And then we need an equitable safety net as we go, so that if people make mistakes, if they fall off, an accident happens, that their fair shot isn't taken from them, right? So we need to have a fair healthcare system that's well funded, so that people have access to quality healthcare, mental health and physical health. And the ability to afford to own their own home if that's what they choose to do. So that's, I think, kind of my guiding principle in all of this is everything we do should be in furtherance of creating that kind of equitable opportunity for everybody, wherever they are, whatever stage in life they're at.
Thank you so much. Keeping on the topic of equity, we have our friend Sarah Gender-Nalik with the Center on Wellness presenting our next question.
Hi everyone, and thank you Mary Jo and Garrett for hosting us today. My question was a little bit heavy in statistics, so I'm going to be reading it, but as a physician, I think it's really important for all of us to understand the data as we head to the polls and as we make legislative decisions. So that being said, discrimination and systemic barriers to access often make obtaining healthcare services more difficult for LGBTQ individuals and people of color. Because of this, 30% of LGBTQ individuals report being in fair or poor health, compared to 16% of non-LGBTQ individuals. Similarly, 22% of Black women and 32% of Hispanic women report being in fair or poor health, compared to 15% of white women. According to a 2023 survey conducted by Kaiser Family Foundation, 33% of LGBTQ adults reported being treated unfairly or disrespectfully by a healthcare provider in the past 3 years, which is more than double the rate as reported by non-LGBTQ individuals. This discrimination is even more pronounced among LGBTQ people of color. 24% of Black LGBTQ adults, 15% of Hispanic LGBTQ adults, and 4% of white LGBTQ adults report experiencing discrimination based on their race or ethnicity. With data like this in mind, how do you plan to address disparities in healthcare access and outcomes among different racial and LGBTQ communities?
All right, I'll give us just a moment to let the data wash over for a second, and we'll begin with Ms. Jones moving that direction on healthcare equity.
Yay. I'll go first. Looking at the numbers, it would be important to go and figure out what the root cause is for why they're not receiving adequate health care. Why are they not having access to this health care? That would be the first thing to address. As far as the issues with how they are treated, there are laws against this, but clearly it's not working. So systemic racism, systemic sexism, these are things that are largely taught and they kind of ripple through. And we're not openly discussing it, but it does have an effect on how you are perceived as far as if somebody's treating you that way or how you treat somebody else. So systemic issues are a lot more difficult because you are now looking at how somebody thinks and you can't just change their minds. This might involve education for our healthcare providers on how to interact with the LGBTQ community in a way that is more inclusive. So that's hopefully answering the question, but it would be something that I would want to work with you on as far as going over the statistics and how we can implement change in a beneficial way.
Yeah, with any statistics, especially my favorite part of this job is you look at numbers in paper, you see that these are individuals, so putting faces to those numbers, that's something that I would love to delve into with you. I almost died about 2 years ago, had a heart attack. And actually, my cardiologist was yelling at me in front of my whole family. And so I didn't report that in any capacity, but I understand that a lot of people in the medical field are also under their extreme pressures, and they're in a crunch as well currently. And we have a lot of people that are leaving the medical profession. So keeping that with a grain of salt as well. But in terms of health and disparities there, I think a lot of our health and chronic health issues do come down to what food we eat or can afford or are ingesting. And so looking into that is a huge, huge policy issue that I think the vast majority of us are in agreement with, that we need to figure out, well, what actually is the food that we're eating? Is it actually food? And some of the ingredients that we can't pronounce. Because I think that our nutrition has a direct impact on our health, and that doesn't have anything to do with how we look on the outside. But in terms of those data and how these individuals are being impacted, I'd love to meet them. And then part of the oversight comes into, well, let's call up the folks at Corwell. Let's call up the people at that hospital. That's something that, I completely agree with. Any type of injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so part of my job is to fill in the blanks and try to connect these individuals who do have valid claims with the justice they deserve.
Yeah, so I actually think this is a really complicated problem. I mean, the data is clear on it, right? I mean, women's reports of pain is often disbelieved by medical professionals. That's almost doubly so if you're a black woman. There's also issues with doctors underprescribing pain medication for people of color because they inherently believe that they're lying in order to get pain medication. So all of these systemic biases that are built into the system right now, and you really, it's very hard to unteach somebody's bias, which I think is the problem with this, is that at its core you have doctors that are treating people and they have an inbuilt belief, probably subconscious, about that person that they're treating. And to me, the best way to address this is to increase the diversity within the medical profession to begin with. Make sure that there are more black and brown nurses and doctors, more LGBT doctors and nurses, so that at least somewhere along the line, if you as a person feel like the physician or whoever you're seeing isn't properly diagnosing you, there is somebody that you can find that looks like you or shares your identity that you can go to and try to get that second opinion, because right now that's not there for so many people. And of course, education helps, and I know a lot of our hospital systems are trying to invest more in this kind of education, but again, you're fighting against somebody's intrinsic biases, and so it's just such a difficult problem to solve. But I mean, the data you cited, and there's more data on top of it, is really clear that this is happening, and health outcomes for white men are much better. I mean, the longevity statistics in this country, if you segregate out white people from black and brown people, the health outcomes, just the gap is enormous. And a lot of it comes down to care at every single level. So I think, from my perspective, one of the best things we can do is meet the healthcare shortage that we have by increasing the diversity in the profession, so that we have those diversities of experiences and perspectives in there. I think that's the best way we can get through that.
Alrighty, our next question would be very
me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I told you.
That's okay, because they pretty much said it. But Um, again, I might sound like a broken record, but working with you all and those of you that are into the core of all of that, and like again, hearing those statistics, it just breaks my heart and maddens me at the same time, because everyone deserves the right to health care, and everyone deserves the right to be heard and to not feel that you're not being believed about what you feel is happening with your body. I think a lot of those things are broken, and as far as the how the hospitals operate, again, with the care of my mom for the last 15 years, it has been, she was a white woman, and still it was hard, and having to work the system to get the care that was needed, and to say the right words and the right phrases, and to get the right staff that doesn't have that bias or doesn't have, I mean, my mom was bipolar, so she was on a lot of medications, and each new doctor that would come in, I've been taking care of her care for all of these years, and a new doctor would come in and say, she's on too much medication, and I'm like, okay, so let me take you down the road, please, about how this has gone, and having that respect too of what that person has gone through and what they're sharing with you. So again, finding the experts, making those connections, and finding out how we can make that difference in Lansing as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Our next question will be on LGBTQ rights and legislation. Given the historic advances over the past few years to ensure LGBTQ plus Michiganders are equitably protected, including the amendment of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, what will you do to continue building on these successes while also ensuring that these incredible advances are enforced? We'll go back to the standard one so I don't miss anybody in the middle. Start with Representative Andrews moving down the line.
Yeah, so I mean, proud to be able to vote on all of these advances over the last year. The Elliott Larson Civil Rights Expansion was one of our first big 6 bills that we passed after taking the trifecta, which I think demonstrates our caucus's and our state's commitment to protecting those rights. And I think to be one of the more important things we should be looking at now is how to enshrine protections for marriage in Michigan, because we've seen in the last couple of years that the federal Supreme Court has been willing to axe its own precedent, basically at the stroke of a pen, and then take away rights that everybody thought were safe and secure. In particular with Roe v. Wade being overturned. And so, reading that opinion, I think it's pretty hard not to conclude that there are justices on that court that would love to take away some of these other protections that have been enshrined. For me, that's one of the big things we could do is enshrine marriage protection in the same way we enshrined abortion access in our Constitution. There are also, I think, a couple of what seem like small things that we could fix. Jason Morgan, who's a gay representative from Ann Arbor, is working to change gender identifiers within the state code. Right now, it's overwhelmingly masculine. It just says, it's all over the place, and Jason would like to amend a lot of that to neutralize some of the gender language, which I think seems to a lot of people is an innocuous thing, but you think about the signal that sends, and as people read our laws, not feeling excluded from the way that they're stated. So there's just a couple things that I think we can focus on.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Ms. Dash.
I absolutely value and will be an advocate. I don't have all the answers as to how I'm going to exactly be able to do that there. But I have 2 nieces that are gay, and I believe, and friends, and I completely believe that they are allowed to be who they are and be married and love who they want to love, and completely support it.
So, building on what Representative Andrews had already said as far as enshrining the right to marriage within the Michigan state constitution, I think is almost necessary at this point, and protecting your rights as a marginalized, like one of the most marginalized communities in the United States currently. Going a little bit back as a personal story, my favorite uncle, who is one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life, was, this would have been like early 2000s. Every year he would make a Christmas ornament, and he's also an ordained minister with the Christian faith. We grew up in the South, very conservative Christian values. So for him to tell me this, I think he was worried that I was going to deny him or not love him. But he told me that year he took a Christmas ornament and he broke it after he painted it to be the globe. And he said that it represented his year because that was the year that his world caved in. That was the year that he came out to our very Christian conservative family and was terrified of how he would be perceived or accepted. I immediately accepted him. It didn't change how I looked at him or how I loved him. I still value him incredibly. Like his advice has been impeccable on all things in life. But going forward with that, I would want to protect somebody like that from ever feeling like their rights are going to be removed. Roe v. Wade was the first step. When they could remove that was like throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks. Now we've found something that sticks. How can we start removing the other ones as well for the marginalized communities, which then turns around and uplifts a very, for lack of a better word, white, very Christian nationalist community. And I don't think that we are just a community or a country of white Christian people. We have all kinds of people, so.
Representative Paquette?
Yeah, that question is a big reason why I'm here. I want to widen my network to understand what rights are not being upheld for certain segments of our population. That's a really big key to me. I want to meet more people who disagree with any of my stances so I can talk with them, I can vet them. I want to be sharpened in my stance and approach to one of those two buttons that are on that desk in that honorable chamber. It says yes or no. I voted against the widening of the Civil Rights Act here in Michigan based on gender identity. And so this is something that while I was teaching, I had plenty of students who were going through gender distress, and especially during that time of puberty. It's an uncomfortable time. My deepest concern comes down to the allowing children to believe that they might be born in the wrong body. This is something I oppose strongly. I don't think that any person should allow a child to think this or mislead a child to believe this. And so this is something, though, a lot of people might disagree with. And that's why, again, like I said, I'm here. I want to be sharpened by people who might disagree with that. But there are fundamental realities, one of them being that an individual cannot change their biological sex with hormones or drugs. And this is something that I've met with many people who disagree with me on that. But this is something that I think needs to be upheld. People have to be able to talk about this in respectful forums. Because when we're looking at our sex ed programs in particular here in the state of Michigan, teaching a child that they might be able to change their gender identity, that's what's going on currently. But we can't conflate that with biological sex. And we can certainly talk after the show if you'd like, by all means. But I vetted a lot of these sex ed curriculums myself when I was chairing the budgets and going through that. So in terms of this is something that I believe we need more discourse around, clearly from some of the objections. But this is something that, again, I'm very open and I want to learn as much as I can and understand other people's different experiences.
Thank you so much. Again, I understand these are hot button issues. Let's let them finish their time, and then we'll do follow-ups, and we obviously have our mix and mingle time as well. Our next question is on transgender rights. This is another data one, so give us a moment. Transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming individuals continue to face intense public discourse and harmful rhetoric. To foster a constructive conversation, it's crucial to base our discussions on accurate information. First, it's important to recognize that not all transgender or gender nonconforming individuals seek gender-affirming medical procedures. For those who do, particularly minors, there are rigorous standards of care to ensure that right treatments are provided to right patients. For example, puberty blockers have been used safely and effectively for many years, guided by the comprehensive standards that help determine their appropriate use. According to a 2023 study, fewer than 13,000 gender-affirming surgeries were performed on transgender individuals in 2020, with only about 7.7 involving patients under 18. The vast majority of these approximately 100 surgeries were chest surgeries for patients aged 15 to 17. It's important to note that gender-affirming breast reduction surgeries among cisgender males for excess breast tissue and other disorders account for 97% of all gender-affirming breast reduction surgeries among minors. Highlighting these types of procedures are already commonplace and widely accepted when performed on cisgender teens. Thanks to established standards of care, the regret rate for gender-affirming surgeries is less than 1%, in contrast to far more common procedures such as knee replacements, which have a regret rate ranging from 6 to 30%, depending on which study you pick for that one. It's also worth noting that cisgender minors are recipients of significant number of gender-affirming procedures, which underscores the importance of recognizing these medical interventions as not unique to transgender youth. Outside of medical disinformation that has become central to this conversation, transgender and gender nonconforming individuals face discrimination both interpersonally and institutionally. How will you support and protect the rights of transgender individuals, especially in areas such as healthcare, education, and employment?
What was the last one?
Employment. We will begin again at the top with Mr. Andrews.
Sure. Yeah. I very, very fundamentally believe that people should be able to live their lives as safely and openly as they want to. I mean, nobody should ever have to be afraid to come out as trans or to question their gender. Like you said, there's a lot of different reasons to even consider gender therapy that isn't because you think you're a different gender than you were assigned at birth. I mean, men get testosterone all the time as they get older. That's gender affirming, if nothing else. One of the laws that we passed this last year that I think really helps in this makes it so that medical records of kids get sealed earlier. So as a young person, you're able to talk to your doctor, you're able to talk to a medical professional more openly. And at the end of the day, I think that's really what needs to be able to happen here is kids need to be able to have these conversations because maybe there is a kid who's confused. Maybe that's true, and maybe if he talks to a medical professional or talks to a therapist, the kid will realize that that's not what they're going through. It's something else. It's very possible. But if they never get the opportunity, that's going to cause long-lasting damage in its own way. And so, I think probably everybody needs a therapist. I probably need a therapist. So, why not? Let's provide mental health care for everybody so that every kid who's dealing with anything has a chance to talk about it. But to your point, surgery is so rare. Actual reassignment is so rare, and what's more common is suicides. Because people aren't able to get care and aren't able to live openly and don't have affirmation. So I think it's let's put the focus where it needs to be. Let's let people live their lives, be true to themselves, and let's give them the mental health care they need.
Each individual is that, an individual, and each case and person, everybody's unique. And each situation is unique, and I understand where we're at in society, where I don't know the right words for that. Sorry. I guess just each case is unique, and we need to find the systems and the mental health support, bar none, to help each person be in the right space and have the right experts, healthcare, mental health care, whoever they need to help guide them in the right direction and to help them understand the steps. As far as I'm an advocate, I will say that. I'm an advocate and I value. I don't know exactly how I can actually help in Lansing to make those changes, but I will advocate where I can.
I will keep this short. Gender affirming care is health care. At the end of the day, that's it.
Fantastic. We love a short answer. I'll remind everybody both in the positive and affirmative, let's try to keep things quiet in the audience in respect of our in respect of our guests. I appreciate the passion, but we have a mix and mingle afterwards, so we can all get very excited out there. Representative Paquette.
Thank you for that precursor to me. I appreciate it. No, in terms of this and in my responses as well, I've been speaking with as many people as possible, delving into this as much as possible. And again, the invite would be to anyone who might have information to share with me, whether it be through email or otherwise. I seek to learn, I seek to understand, I seek to talk to people who are looking with this issue, because it's not going to go away anytime soon. And there are a lot of people that have misunderstandings that we need to clarify. With regard to transgender care, we have to discern what is long-term care. And so over in England, they were a few years down the road in terms of pursuing gender-affirming care, and ahead of us. And so now they are revising their approach. And there was an independent systematic review done by Hillary Cass that recently came out, pointing out how there is a disappointingly sparse lack of information that's long-term, tracking people, especially children with puberty blockers. And so they've revised their approach to gender-affirming care. And they do not administer puberty blockers to new patients anymore because of this. And this is something that has to be pointed out. And what you mentioned with the 2023 study and things like that, all of these things come down to the WPATH standards. And these have been debunked. And this is something that if we want to provide the best care for our most vulnerable young people, then we need to provide them with long-term evidence-based care. And this is something that the medical profession hasn't really gotten up to speed on yet. But our friends across the pond, other first world countries are revising their approach to this. And I think we need to take heed and look at that same aspect, because this is something that, again, like I said, is not going to go away anytime soon. We had, I think, on one of the graphics that was posted that 1/5, it's projected to have 1/5 of Americans are soon to be identifying in the population. And so this is something that we have to have strong discussions on, or it will divide our country even further. And I don't want that. None of my former students want that I'm still in touch with, that are upset with some of my stances. But I don't think any person should have to be thankful for the fact that they were able to go through natural development and puberty themselves.
I just want a point of misinformation. The Cass report has been debunked, and WPATH, which is the international body, is actually the best practice for the entire globe at this point, and also found her findings really unfounded and quite shaky. So I just needed to share that with you. The Cass report.
And that includes Dr. Cass has walked back several of the significant findings within her own study. So those are publicly available statements from Dr. Cass herself. And many of those changes were done by politicians and not care providers.
And so this is and if you don't mind.
Absolutely, yeah, no, absolutely.
The debunking is done on both sides, right? So where are we? And so what that review, systematic review, did was it looked at all the studies that were out there. I think the one that you alluded to was the one of the Netherlands. And so a lot of these were surveys, and they were pointing to how these don't hold water if you're applying the standards of long-term evidence-based care. And so again, a lot of this is happening. What we do know is that they have revised their approaches. Other countries are doing this at alarming rates because of the fact that so many children are now identifying with this capacity and then also becoming pharmaceutical patients for life early on. And this is something that we should all be concerned about. But in terms of the debunking, NPR just put out an interview with her talking about some of these issues and the political pushback that she's gotten.
Well, and then again, just point of fact here, the author has been debunked. So it's not like, in other words, the greater research, the more well-founded policies that are ensconced in WPATH have actually proven to be the way forward. And so it's not an equivalent, it's a false equivalence to say one debunk is the same as the other debunk. When the author and her research have found to be at fault, and she's walking it back as a result. So there's one way to debunk just for the sake of debunking, and then there's the other debunking. Boy, I think I should write a song. And then there's another debunking that's actually about fact and science. And so so again, false equivalence, and just want us to stay on track on that.
And just a little context, if I may. So Dr. Hillary Cass was chosen. It was an independent review.
Exactly.
She was a highly respected pediatrician.
Was is an important word.
And now because of political waves, right? Political
Not
winds,
political
and this is
waves, because of the science, sir. I beg you, just in terms of.
where. Have you read her review?
Yes, I have actually.
Good.
And I've read the alternative,
Okay.
which is to kind of say, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is what this study has found.
Okay.
So, and I think we have one of our staff members who's actually done a study of it as well, and they're on their way too.
Great.
And we can speak afterwards,
That'd be
but I
amazing.
just need to be clear, and I want to make sure that the wrong information isn't going out there.
Well-
So just FYI, please note what we've shared.
On a last note, then, has it been debunked that England and other countries are revising their
A lot
approach
of
to
political
Cuba?
movements
Has that
and a
been
lot of
debunked?
politicians are changing policy on a national political field.
But has that been debunked?
Politicians have changed their opinions based on whatever political machinations are happening in their nations.
National Health Service.
The political policies have changed based on some parties and some movements' desires to see policies change, not in accordance necessarily with provider standards.
And again, I'm grateful for you to speak.
So, and
with
it's just to
this.
say that there's political debunking and then there's science. And so.
There is science, and we are
that's-
deeply involved in it right now.
That's right. And so we're happy to know that the science is in support of trans youth health care.
The science, but not science.
Oh, it's science.
Right. Time will tell.
We love some rigorous debate, everybody. Let's go ahead and lighten up the mood and talk about safe schools and LGBTQ student health care. Let's keep things light and jovial. Local MiFi data indicates that over 20% of 20% of students, which actually Mr. Paquette just mentioned, 20% number of 1 in 5, indicates that 20% of students in Berrien County identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community. This data is also reflected in national polling, with over 28% of Gen Z adults identifying as LGBTQ plus. The mental health outcomes are dire for those who are not supported at home, school, or in their communities. What would you do to improve the lives of LGBTQ plus youth in our community? Representative Paquette, we'll begin with you.
That comes down even to our beginning question on education in general, where the culture of a school is the people that are in that school. And I was very grateful to be a part of a school where we focused immensely on school culture in the classroom, how you go about with all these unique human beings that are in your classroom for a time. How do you pay them the respect that they deserve, the dignity they deserve, but then also how do you have a productive learning environment for all? And so this comes down to talented people that are in touch with their community, and they figure out how their school is going to be just a mirror to their community. And also these young people rooting them into their community where they see work and see value in the time that they're putting in the classroom. So many young people don't necessarily see value in what they're learning. And so that's a cultural aspect with regard to education. It takes talented people, but it also, these people are pouring into young folks, and they need to be poured in as well. And so an emphasis, a focus on culture. Like I kind of mentioned, I was blessed to be a part of a school that we were able to modify intensely how we did discipline, how we did restorative practices, how we approached conflict and behavior problems in our classroom. This involved being in touch with parents in the community, bringing in stakeholders and others who can address any type of issue, but then also, like I said, it's those teachers that are in front of these young people every single day that need to be poured into. And so it's them that make or break it. Got to remember that always.
Absolutely. Ms. Jones?
Inclusivity within our staff at the schools would be beneficial, I think, for the students, because it would give them somebody that they can talk to or feel safe talking to, somebody like them. One of the other things, when I was knocking doors in Buchanan, I met a teacher, a male teacher by the name of Mr. D. That's what all of his students know him as, and he said that he works very closely with the LGBTQ plus community, especially the students, as far as they have like basketball, they have like their own little kind of a rec thing that goes on after school, so that the students have a safe place to go. Not all of the students feel safe coming out to their parents. So they need support that they're not receiving at home. They need that support that they are going to hopefully be receiving from their schools, because we're failing them otherwise. The rate of suicide is so high in youth that are LGBTQ+. Why is this? It's because they're not receiving the services and the support that they need whether it's gender affirming, whether it is, just being accepted for who they are. When you don't get that and you feel like you're an outsider in your own family, it's hurtful, and they take that to school with them. They take that to the job place when they graduate. It follows them throughout life. So if we are able to do that at the fundamental building blocks early on in childhood, at the schools, then that would set them up for a life of prosperity afterwards.
I absolutely agree that every child needs to have a safe place where they can be who they want to be, and sometimes it's unfortunate that can't be with their parents or their guardians or the family that they live in or the space that they live in if they're in a home. Without parents, like in a foster home or foster care. Again, back to the connections, the students themselves can help guide us. There are experts who study this. Those are the people I think that we need to be working with and talking to and finding out. There are all these studies, and we have all of this information, and I believe we can do better, and we can be better with all of that and find the balance. That's one of my campaign slogans, is to do better, be better, find the balance. And bringing all of those people into the connection point to help find the solutions that will work for everyone. And there are adults who have, for years, already been through this, and those adults can help guide us and help us put things in place for the children to make it better for them. They can stand and be the adult that they wish they had had as they were growing up.
So much, and then Representative Andrews.
Take a second to consider the luxury that it is to not have the validity of your existence continually questioned and debated by other people. And think about, being a kid, because I remember middle school, and there's about no amount of money you could pay me to go back to middle school, I don't think. And then I imagine what middle school might have been like at my small Catholic school if I was questioning my identity, if I was questioning my gender, if I was trying to figure out if I was straight or gay and who I was. Because there's a lot of other stuff we're figuring out at that age too. And then to have people around you consistently debating and discussing whether how you think and feel about yourself is real, valid, in any way true, and what that does to a person. And I just think that's so important to remember in all of this is there's a lot happening in this area right now, but these are real people at the end of the day, real kids that are going through all this. And if there's any silver lining in the statistic that you presented, the fact that 1 in 5 students are now comfortable identifying as LGBTQ plus means that our society has at least made some kind of positive motion, because I know that number was way lower when I was in high school and middle school. And so I think that at least we can say that we're making progress, but we obviously have a long way to go. I think more investment in school counselors is really critical in this. There's not enough school counselors. The ratios are way too high. Kids can't get the help they need. And they do need that safe space at school. They really do. I had a lot of friends growing up that absolutely could not have come out to their parents. It would have been a disaster. They'd have been kicked out of their houses. And so having some place, and you're at school more time than you're anywhere else as a kid, basically, having the ability to go to somebody there and be open and honest about yourself and know that you're going to be protected, that's got to exist. It just has to. So, we've put more funding into that, I know, for ongoing funding for school counselors, but that's one of those areas that I'm really passionate about in education. We've got to get more school counselors into schools, especially with the mental health crisis that's happening among kids right now.
Absolutely. In the interest of, we have a lot of new folks who've kind of come in since we began. We have just a couple questions left, but let's kind of take a deep breath. Let's all take a moment, right? Mindfulness is great, as a great part of mental health care, in fact. Let's do just a quick reintroduction. We'll start with Representative Andrews going down, and let's say, what was your song of the summer as we kind of go down? So a little reintroduction with a little fun what was your song of the summer? We all know it's Brat Summer, but it doesn't have to be Brat.
Okay. Joey Andrews, represent the 38th House District currently, which runs from Saugatuck to New Buffalo along the coastline. Song of the summer is a tricky one. So I was a music major. I'm a big music listener, musician, all that kind of stuff. So this is actually like a really hard question for me to answer. But I will tell you that I recently discovered this really great band called The Amazing Devil. And there's nothing satanic about it. So like, you know, for anybody who's recording this, but they're like a folk rock kind of band, and their song Farewell Wanderlust has become one of my favorite recent songs. So I'm just gonna like lean into that one and give you all a really great recommendation for a band you should check out and a really good song by them. So.
Kerry Tapper, running for the 39th district, mostly Van Buren County, a little bit of Berrien, and a little bit of Allegan. Song of the Summer, Firework by Katy Perry.
I'm Angela Jones. I am running for District 37, which is South County and part of Cass. Song of the Summer, I listen to so much music. I'll go with the last song I listened to, which was Can I Get a Witness? So.
I'm Brad Paquette, same district as Angela. And my song of the summer would have to be Libbi and Mika singing Snowy Days. I've got a 2.5-year-old and one on the way. So it's been crazy because I'll find myself driving in the car and no kid is in the car, but I'm still listening to the song. And I don't know if anyone's had that happen before, but that's definitely the song of the summer for me, even Snowy Days. So.
Absolutely. And I am your moderator, Garrick. The answer that's correct is Noah Khan's song Forever. He's perfect, and I love him. He was the soundtrack of this last, 2 years of my life. Okay, so going back into it, we have our friend Ashley. Why did I almost blank? Ashley, fantastic. We love her. Intercare Student Health Center over at the Benton Harbor High School.
You can forget my name anytime.
Oh my goodness.
If you're going to add all that extra to
Yes, the wonderful, the renowned, some might even say.
Keep going. I'm
Yeah, absolutely.
No. All right, so my question is about inclusive sex education. So comprehensive sex ed has been proven to positively impact youth's lives by reducing risk, improving self-protective skills, increased child-parent communication, increased disclosure of abuse, and so much more. So my question actually has two parts. First, do you support teaching comprehensive, inclusive, and science-based sex education programs in our public schools? And second, as an elected official, would you work to remove challenges and barriers that exist in Michigan to get our kids the knowledge they need to better protect themselves, their lives, and their bodies?
All right. Representative Paquette, let's go ahead and begin with you.
Yeah, as I mentioned a little bit before in one of the prior questions, well, a couple different things. The school boards are the ones who figure out what sex ed program they'd like to have, the one they want to adopt. They vote on it. This is something that like I mentioned, mimics the community. It's what the community wants. They vote in their school board members. I don't think the state should be involved in making those decisions in any capacity, one way or another. Ann Arbor is very different than Niles when I worked there, still is, and that's perfectly fine. Schools are meant to be, like I said, a mirror of their community, and how they want their school to run, especially on that issue, is their prerogative.
Yes and yes, but probably where I oppose Brad on this subject is that I do think that we need to have minimums set forth by the state so that as far as equity and education goes, all of our students are kind of learning the same thing, and it's not, one district is teaching sex ed a certain way and another district is teaching sex ed a different way, and then it's super confusing when these students are spit out into the world and they all think differently. So from an equity standpoint, get them all on the same page to begin with. And I think that would be a step moving in the right direction.
Yes and yes. And I don't have a lot to add to that. I support it.
Yeah, fully support it. Sex ed is part of comprehensive health education as well. Kids need to understand that as they're getting older and they're going through puberty. Somebody who went to Catholic schools, I can assure you that abstinence-only sex education was a complete failure and did not work in the slightest, and probably was actively detrimental to a lot of people in general. So I think we have to have a comprehensive sexual education for kids, and I think the data is pretty clear on it too. I mean, in states and schools where that happens, rates of teen pregnancies drop, STD rates go down, healthier relationships as a result are built. It's really just, I think, a win-win all around.
All right, thank you so much. So to close out for us today, we're going to talk about your motivation for running. What is one thing that excites you the most about the opportunity to represent Southwest Michigan and its citizens? And Representative Andrews will go down.
Yeah, I kind of touched on this earlier in the intro question, but there's so much opportunity in our communities here. Somebody who lives here and grew up here, and I just feel like we haven't been achieving to the level of opportunity we could within our communities, with what's possible within our communities here. And so one of the more exciting things for me is being able to go to Lansing and advocate for those opportunities and to help bring attention back to our communities. A story I tell everybody is one of my first meetings in Lansing with one of the state agencies. The director was actually completely unaware that we had manufacturing in Berrien County. He just thought we were all tourism and farms. And so, that's the sort of thing that I feel, we have to correct, right? We have to let people know there are other opportunities here. There's a lot of economic opportunity here. And so being able to advocate for our communities up there with all of these statewide groups and let them know that, they should be keeping their eyes here too. That Southwest Michigan has a lot of potential, especially as we look at how we're going to grow our state and attract more people. I mean, where else do you want to live, right? I can't really think of anywhere else. So,
Can you give me that question?
Absolutely.
I want to make sure I answer it in the right.
What is the thing that excites you the most about the opportunity to represent the community of Southwest Michigan and its citizens?
And then what was this? Was there a second part? Or no? Okay, sorry, I got myself confused.
No worries.
I'm super excited to. The reason I stepped in the arena is for our children. I just can't believe this is where we're at compared to where I was at their age, at my kids' age, excuse me. And see, and I just believe that we can do better. I truly believe we can do better, and I want to be a voice for that.
I would say I'm most excited about advocating for our community's needs, creating a more fair playground, so to speak, for our children, our future, to build a better today and a brighter tomorrow. And that's really, again, community building is very important to me, and advocating for those needs and creating the supportive network necessary for our communities to thrive.
I really love talking to people. I love disagreements. I love agreements. I love, delving over the hard issues of our day, because young people in particular need to see good discourse, healthy discourse in the political arena. I have much respect for any of the candidates that put themselves out there, because obviously you get subjected to a lot of passionate people, right? Oftentimes when you're hearing from folks, it's because they're mad at you, and that's something that I've never left a conversation that was in a negative fashion with anybody, and even no matter how stark of a disagreement we might have had, and that's something that really excites me day to day, speaking with people, and then also trying to advocate for a government that preserves the blessings that we've been able to grow up with.
All right. Well, as we close out, I want to first thank our incredible candidates who are all here. Go ahead and let's give them last round of applause. I also want to thank Forest Moon Collective for hosting us here tonight. We love that. And their beautiful space. And then some just light housekeeping. If you didn't sign in when you came in, we have some sign-ups in the front. Please do so. We'd love to get your information. If you do not want us to email you, you don't have to put your email there. But we'd love to let you know when we're doing more things like this. And obviously we want to make sure to, again, appreciate them coming down here. I know that it is not always easy to have a crowd full of people who may or may not agree with you or disagree with you, but being able to take that first step into being a civic representative is a huge step for people. They are not private citizens anymore, as you will hear them if you talk to Representative Andrews or Representative Paquette. They will tell you stories of not anymore having the blessings of being just regular people going to the grocery store. And I also want to, again, thank you all for being here. Now I'm going over time. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank you all for being civically engaged and being interested in these topics. It is such an important time, and it's so important for us all to be registered to vote, make sure we check our registration, and make sure that we continue to be engaged in this cycle. I also want to shout out Miss Yarborough, sorry, forgive me, who's here. And if you have a few words, please.
This is a wonderful group in size and in who's here, and I just want to say welcome to my district. I am the county commissioner for the city of Benton Harbor and precincts 2 and 4 in Benton Charter Township. I want you to know that I ran for 1 term, which is 2 years. I'm in my 20th year. It's so beautiful to see you all here. And something someone said, when you work on things and the reward is that you go along and it's there, the building is done, or the schools are better, or whatever you do, just do it the very best that you can. And you don't know when it's gonna flower. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then last, certainly, our Executive Director, Mary Jo Schnapp.
Hi, listen, just wanted to give you a good, again, thank you for coming here, for being civically engaged. Vote, please, plan your vote, but get everyone you know to do the same. There's a lot of folks who are saying, yeah, I'm gonna vote, and they don't, they're not even registered. So push them, not like horrible stuff, but just say, oh yeah, well, share your plan and then ask for theirs. And don't judge, but just help them understand how to get registered and how to vote. Also, I'd like to call your attention to this wonderful spread of food that we need to be gone. They now need to eat. And please consider donating to the OutCenter so we can continue to bring you great programs like this one. And again, go vote.
Yes. OutCenter.org/vote has all the information you need as well to make sure you're registered, make sure you can find your location. So please check that out. Nice little plug to end us out. But again, let's give one last round of applause to our candidates and we'll close out. Thank you all so much.